Tartarian Empire is one of the most intriguing historical mysteries, capturing the imagination of those who believe in lost civilizations and hidden histories. Some claim it was a vast, technologically advanced empire stretching across Eurasia, with sophisticated architecture, free energy, and a thriving society, one that was systematically erased from history. Others argue that Tartaria was simply a misunderstood geographical term, used by European cartographers to describe Central Asia and Siberia before these regions were fully mapped. The disappearance of Tartaria raises questions about how history is written, who controls it, and whether a grand civilization was intentionally wiped from the record. The term Tartary was commonly used in Western maps from the 16th to 19th centuries. These maps labeled the lands of present-day Russia, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, China, and parts of Eastern Europe as Great Tartary. European explorers of the time knew little about this region and often categorized it as a single, mysterious entity. Tartary was depicted as a vast, independent civilization, and some maps even marked it as an empire. But by the mid-19th century, the term vanished from maps and textbooks. Why did it disappear so suddenly? What happened to the people, culture, and supposed advancements of this lost civilization? One of the biggest claims made by alternative historians is Tartaria was a real empire that was systematically erased from history to hide its technological achievements and societal advancements. According to this theory, the Tartarians possessed architectural wonders, free energy technology, and an advanced understanding of electromagnetism and sound frequencies. The evidence often cited for this includes grand, ornate buildings with features that some researchers claim were too advanced for the time period they were supposedly built in. These structures, seen across Russia, China, India, and even North America, include massive domes, spires, and intricate stone carvings that suggest knowledge of energy efficiency and sacred geometry. A key component of the Tartarian theory is the mud flood hypothesis, which suggests that a catastrophic event, possibly in the 18th or 19th century, buried much of Tartarian civilization under layers of mud, leading to the destruction, repurposing, or erasure of their cities. Proponents of this idea point to numerous historical photographs of buildings with partially buried lower floors, doors, and windows, which they believe show evidence that structures were excavated rather than originally constructed at ground level. Many famous cities, including Moscow, St. Petersburg, Istanbul, and Paris, have buildings where the lower levels appear to be underground, leading some to speculate that these were once part of a thriving Tartarian empire before a massive flood buried much of the civilization. Critics argue that these buried structures are simply the result of urban planning, changing street levels, and natural sediment accumulation over time. In many cities, especially in Europe, the ground level has risen over centuries due to constant construction, the accumulation of debris, and deliberate burial of older structures. However, some Tartaria researchers believe the mud flood was not a natural event, but a deliberate global reset, designed to wipe out knowledge of Tartarian civilization and its technological advancements. Another major aspect of the Tartaria mystery is architectural anomalies found across the world. Many buildings that were supposedly built in the 19th century exhibit an incredibly advanced level of craftsmanship, with large domes, impossible to replicate stonework, and electromagnetic properties that some researchers believe indicate knowledge of energy harvesting. Theories suggest that world fairs of the late 19th and early 20th centuries were actually a cover-up, used to showcase these rediscovered Tartarian buildings before demolishing them under the pretense of being temporary structures. Events like the 1893 Chicago World's Fair and the 1915 San Francisco Panama Pacific Exposition displayed massive ornate structures built in what was called the Beaux-Arts style, but many of these buildings were destroyed shortly after the events rather than preserved. Why would such grand structures, supposedly built in record time, be torn down instead of maintained? Another strange element of Tartaria's supposed erasure is Old World maps that show Great Tartary as a large and distinct landmass up until the 19th century. Then, suddenly, references to Tartary disappear from historical records, and the region is instead absorbed into the Russian Empire, the Qing dynasty, and other emerging states. This has led to speculation that history was deliberately rewritten to hide the true nature of Tartaria's existence. Theorists argue that the sudden decline in references to Tartary coincides with a period of intense geopolitical shifts, such as the expansion of Russia, the decline of the Mongol influence, and the colonization of Central Asia. Some believe that major powers like the British, Russian, and American elites conspired to erase Tartaria to maintain control over history, education, and technological advancements. Supporters of the Tartaria theory also point to historical inconsistencies in architecture and technology. They question how civilizations that supposedly lacked modern machinery were able to construct massive cathedrals, government buildings, and infrastructure with mathematical precision that even today would be difficult to replicate. Some believe the Tartarians had access to lost energy sources, such as atmospheric electricity, wireless power, or even anti-gravity technology. This theory suggests that buildings like the St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow, the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, and various star forts worldwide were not built by the civilizations we associate them with, but were instead remnants of a lost global Tartarian empire. Another unusual aspect of the Tartarian mystery is the idea of orphan trains and missing populations. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, large numbers of orphans were transported across the world, particularly in the United States, Canada, Australia, and parts of Europe. Some researchers speculate that these children were actually survivors of a population reset, a time when an entire generation of Tartarian citizens was erased or relocated to fit a new world order. Could these orphan trains have been part of a wider effort to repopulate regions after a global catastrophe or war that eliminated the original Tartarian inhabitants? Skeptics of the Tartarian theory argue that there is no concrete evidence of a unified Tartarian empire. They assert that historical references to Tartary simply reflected European ignorance of Central Asian cultures, rather than a conspiracy to erase an empire. They also point out that the so-called Tartarian architecture can be explained as a combination of Byzantine Islamic and European styles, rather than evidence of a lost civilization. Furthermore, the concept of a mud flood event lacks geological support, as there is no global layer of mud or sediment from the supposed event in mainstream archaeology. Despite these counter-arguments, the mystery of Tartaria continues to attract researchers, alternative historians, and independent thinkers who believe that mainstream history does not tell the full story. The rapid disappearance of Tartary from maps, the architectural anomalies, the orphan trains, and the strange evidence of buried buildings all raise legitimate questions about whether the history we have been taught is truly complete. In the end, the question remains: was the Tartarian Empire a real advanced civilization erased from history, or is it just a misunderstanding of historical cartography and architecture? The lack of definitive answers ensures that the mystery of Tartaria will continue to captivate the minds of those who seek hidden truths and lost knowledge. Whether real or imagined, Tartaria serves as a symbol of the possibility that history is far more complex and possibly far more controlled than we have been led to believe.